Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and this is In Time. It's been so easy to get cynical about everything. I think people tend to get more cynical as they get older. Part of it's experience. Part of it is the grass is always greener, and when you're older, you're like, well, when I was young. But so we had two stories that we were going to cover today, and the first is really quite groundbreaking, so we're going to mostly ignore it. The second one is far more important, and I think is going to have profound consequences, I hope, for this country going forward, and will be one of the few times where we really get to see that arc that Malcolm, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, the arc of history being long and slow, but bending towards justice. We've had a great deal of injustice. We've talked a lot about Epstein, how much he got away with, how protected he was, and there are so many problems with bringing someone like that to justice, not the least of which is that there's a million. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's an unpleasant subject, so it's difficult, and nobody wants it. Would all kind of almost rather look the other way. The victims have to almost re-victimize themselves to try to get justice. They have to testify. And there are lawyers who know how to make it painful for them. And then if you try to get justice and fail, you've been victimized again. I've been on the fence about whether or not I think this Epstein thing is going to be what takes down the Trump administration. Early on, I was very strongly for the notion that this was it, and that the entire network was going to come down, including people from other countries that were involved, but more importantly, those directly here. And then with Congress out and MAGA apparently dropping it, I sort of leaned towards the other direction. I would like to thank the House Oversight Committee. I've been looking at them a little cynically, saying, yeah, they're just going to lose one or two Republicans and then boom, the whole thing crashes. And I think I have dramatically underestimated them. So tonight we're going to talk about one story, and then we're going to talk about the Oversight Committee and what to expect in the next 24 hours, because I think it's going to be rather big. So the first story today, Donald Trump lost. A judge has declared, and this story has become so secondary, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not remembering the name of the judge. He's Judge Breyer. He is the, I think, younger brother of Supreme Court Justice Breyer. But anyways, the judge has ruled against Trump and said that he did in fact violate Posse Comitatus. That would be the first president in history to have been found to violate Posse Comitatus. Several have been brought up before, I think 3. This is the first one where a judge says he did. It was an actual trial. It was a bench trial, 3 days long. Judge said, yep, he did it. He violated it. This violation was found to be both in the National Guard and in the Marines that he sent. So each one individually violated it. This would, by the way, in Los Angeles, is a little easier. So the easiest way for him to deploy the National Guard is to do so in D.C., because D.C. does not have a governor that can stop him. Second easiest is to do it in a place where there are active protests, and then you can, if you can find a way to get those to turn violent or just whatever, and so this was his second easiest test case, and it failed. The judge has told him now, criminal sanctions are one of the things presumably available to the judge, but since the Supreme Court has already said you can't do that with the sitting president, he has said, at least for now, the president is barred from deploying any further military in the United States, and he must return the 300 remaining National Guardsmen from Los Angeles. This is likely to be appealed. The judge said that he could wait until the 9th on an appeal, and then he had to act on the order, so he gave him at least a little time. That appeal will undoubtedly go to the Supreme Court, so we will see this at the Supreme Court. We're getting speculation on all sorts of sides as to how it's going to land, because this is qualitatively different than other things that have ended up before the Supreme Court. I'm not convinced. Thomas and Alito don't care, and they'll do whatever they want. So, at any rate, Trump came out within minutes of this finding and said that he is going to send the military to Chicago. So Chicago is bracing. ICE has already informed the chief of, not the chief of police, sorry, the head of the state police, that ICE will be coming and that they need to prepare themselves to assist ICE in any way that ICE demands, and the National Guard will be presumably deploying, despite the fact that he has now been found by a court to have violated Posse Comitatus. We will see. That's big news. As you know, 33,000 documents were released today, and we just have not had time to go over them. But that release covered something else that most people don't know. There was a press conference before the release, and it wasn't covered. We are going to play that press conference for you now. It is a press conference by the committee. That press conference... So the Oversight Committee today spent a great deal, just to refresh, or if you're new here, the House Oversight Committee decided they wanted to do something about Epstein, and it was clear that Republicans who control Congress weren't going to. They got enough Republicans to assist them that they were able to get a number of subpoenas, despite the best efforts of the House committee chair. He protested, and normally such protests are successful. Having said that, they were able to use cloture to discharge to force the a subpoena to a number of former presidents, a number of former administrative officials, Maxwell, a number of other people, and to the DOJ for all of the files. What we see today is a small piece of it. They decided to spend today talking with the victims. Now, as I said earlier in the show, you only do that if you're really serious about going forward, because if you fail, they now, they're going to be able to go out and say, we talked to him. He said he was going to do something. He didn't do it. So the press conference was amazing. And tomorrow, 10:30 a.m., there will be a press conference held by Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna from the Oversight Committee. No, sorry, they're not from the Oversight Committee. They are general members of Congress. They will be holding a press conference. They have, as we discussed earlier, signed their own discharge position to force Congress, to force the DOJ to release the files publicly themselves. In order to avoid this vote, Speaker Johnson broke the House for vacation early. He broke them early to miss this vote. So they didn't have this vote. So these two representatives, Massie and Khanna, have decided to attempt, they need 218 signatures to attempt a discharge petition, which would, in effect, pass the bill demanding that the DOJ release the files, regardless of Johnson's, with or without Johnson's support. Now, we spoke about whether or not that would work, and if the release today was maybe an attempt to convince people that they don't have to sign on to this bill. A number of Republicans are, in fact, refusing to sign it. So the sponsor and co-sponsor are having a press conference tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. In attendance will be roughly 100 Epstein victims. 100 victims will be there at the press conference tomorrow. 10 will be speaking. We have been told that what we are going to hear will be shocking and disturbing. So we will be carrying that press conference live tomorrow. There's a link to it pinned at the top. But again, there was one tonight where the House Oversight Committee spoke with a number of that 100 that are in town. I think they only spoke with about 10 of them. But one of them they had never even heard from before and isn't in the files. So, and then they gave a press conference afterwards. I believe that press conference was so powerful that it's really what we should be talking about tonight. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Is a press conference that happened about 3 hours ago. It is being held by the Democrats and a couple of Republicans on the House Oversight Committee. These are the ones who successfully forced a discharge petition in the House, in the committee, to force the DOJ to release the files to them. What they say is already pretty shocking. My advice to you, first of all, some of it is going to be triggering. My advice to you is it's about 40 minutes. I will interrupt on occasion, but not often because you guys want to hear it. But my advice to you, stay through the whole thing. We would not be putting this on our air if we didn't think this was the most important thing we could give to you today. With that, the House press conference after meeting with a number of the victims, and this is a trigger warning. It was aired on C-SPAN, so it was, but it's not easy. And I will also say the discussion about the courage involved is amazing too. So we're gonna make it pretty large for you so you can see. And my advice is to stay through the whole thing. You can close your eyes.
We're going to go ahead and start. I'm Robert Garcia, the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, and we're here with, of course, the other Democrats that, of course, are on this committee. But most importantly, for the last couple of hours, we've been hearing directly from the victims who have suffered incredible, horrific abuse by Jeffrey Epstein, by Ghislaine Maxwell, and many others who have been involved in these horrific crimes. I will say, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us, that the courage that these women showed today has motivated us so much more to seek justice, accountability, and transparency. And we do not care how powerful, how connected, or what political party those that have victimized and caused horrific pain and sexual abuse to these women are. We will seek justice. I want to just start. We have a few folks who are going to say some remarks. I want to start with Ayanna Pressley. Our Congresswoman, of course, has been a great leader on this. We'll share from a few folks, and I will wrap it up and answer any questions at that time. I want to add before we start that much of the conversation that we had is also confidential, and it's our job to protect the privacy of the women and what they said, and there are numerous conversations that will be happening in the days ahead. So, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Garcia. What we heard here today was harrowing. and it is proof of what has been an institutional, systemic betrayal for decades. These women now who were preyed upon, groomed, exploited, violated from as young as 13 years old, their bodies violated, their minds manipulated, and their dreams denied. Aspiring artists, lawyers, actors, people who had big dreams. And those dreams have been dashed and denied because of the shame they carry, because of the trauma they carry. It is a lifetime sentence. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but his hurt and his harm is alive and well in the daily experiences of these survivors. Maxwell is incarcerated, but it is these survivors, these victims, who are still very much in jail. And they are deserving of transparency, of accountability, and of healing. We are where we are today because of the leadership of Ranking Member Garcia and our Ranking Member on the Subcommittee for Law Enforcement, Summer Lee, enforcing that vote for a subpoena, because in order for us to hold powerful abusers to account who participated actively in a predator, pedophile, Ponzi scheme meant to feed on the daily perversions of a rich and powerful man and his enablers and those who were his co-conspirators, we want to center the victims and the survivors, not shield the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected. So we forced a vote for a subpoena in a hearing that was on child trafficking to point out the hypocrisy. Then I led calls for a hearing in the Committee on Oversight centering the victims. And my colleagues joined with me in that. We do believe that that did lead to pressure that resulted in today's roundtable, where many of the victims said it was the first time that they had felt heard. On the heels of the many years of abuse that they experienced, to be re-victimized and traumatized by a government. They had abusers that told them they were trash. And because they've never gotten justice and been heard, it has contributed to the ways in which they have felt demoralized and invisible. The role of this committee is to be an efficient and effective pursuit of the truth, and we will be until these survivors get the justice that they deserve. Again, we will not shield powerful abusers. They must be taken into account, and that cannot happen if we are not centering and prioritizing the voices of survivors. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague and dear friend, Congresswoman Simon from California, who has worked for many years with survivors of trafficking.
Good afternoon, everyone. Latifah Simon from California's 12th District. Today we had the honor of listening to extremely brave women who talked about the ongoing rape and sexual exploitation that they endured by the rich and the powerful. And for 3 decades, their voices have been ignored. These are young women who have been on record telling their stories, and yet justice has been denied. Justice has been denied to the young woman who talked about being groomed to go over Jeffrey Epstein's home where she was raped. Children leaving high school to be raped and left to go home alone to then go to school the next day. One of the things that I will tell you, the brave and courageous women today, what they did with both Republicans and Democrats, they sat before us at a round table and gave us their souls, believing that maybe this time they would get justice. Maybe this time they would be seen as children, not adultified by men who ravaged their bodies. Maybe then they thought today, if they testified in front of this hearing, that we, as members of Congress, would not only lift up their stories and seek justice, that we would hear the truth and the life of girls and young people all over this country who are continuously bought and sold, who never seek justice. Because they too, like these women, fear retribution. If we are worth our names on our letterhead, we will not only seek justice and get answers, we will work to protect these women. We will work to ensure that every individual, every adult that had anything to do with their trafficking, their rape, that they are held to account. For over 30 years, I have worked with young women who have been moved through the trafficking channels of this country, and we rarely see them getting justice. Today, hopefully, will be a new day. Oversight Dems, we are working extremely hard with our colleagues, and we are so proud of our leadership. Now we have to move on, get answers, provide protection and support for these women so that more folks come forward, and that the United States is looked upon, hopefully, as a country that protects children, that protects young women, that ensures that if you hurt one of our children, you will absolutely be held to the maximum levels of accountability. Thank you all.
All right, I'm going to pause it here for just 1 second. So they say more, and they inadvertently give a name. They directly give a number of extraordinarily serious accusations that you'll be hearing momentarily. But what I find most impressive is this does not strike me as one of those speeches that people make and they don't mean it. They're just trying to, it's a standard stump speech. It was by this point in the press conference that I realized that everybody we've been listening to is taking this very, very seriously. And if it costs them their careers, they will finish this. And that's what cost the careers of the people on the January 6th committee. I don't think it's going to cost them their careers here, but either way, this committee is not going to stop. And they make that crystal clear. And they make it crystal clear justice is not even close to being done. Not even close. So this has nothing anymore to do with Epstein or Maxwell. It has to do with a much bigger cover-up at the government level.
And I would like to actually introduce my colleague, 𝐒𝐚𝐬, who you heard before is the ranking member of the subcommittee, the Oversight Dems, representing, of course, Oversight Dems in the subcommittee for law enforcement. Ms. Lee.
Thank you all so much. About a month ago, we were through the Oversight Committee subcommittee on federal law enforcement. Me and alongside our colleagues on that committee were able to force a vote to pass a motion to subpoena the Department of Justice to release all of the files associated with the Epstein case, of course, unredacted and complete. We know that since then, we've seen a small trickle in of papers and files that, of course, revealed very little new, but was, again, another attempt to obstruct justice, to distract from what we are here to do, and to, of course, prolong this out. But what we saw today in listening to these incredibly brave women who were once young girls, who were victimized repeatedly and have been repeatedly victimized since then because of profound levels of injustice, profound levels of failure, systemic failure at every single level. They are here to remind us that the reason why we passed this motion, the reason why we had, even if it was just a little bipartisan support at the time, was because our reason for being here is to make sure that whether it is the government of the United States or princes or elected officials from other countries or wealthy billionaires, that no one should be above the law. That if we are going to be a country of laws, that they must be equal, applied to every single person. but that also we have a responsibility to restore these victims. It was the government itself that failed these women. It's the government itself right now that is keeping them from the justice, from the healing, and from the peace that they need and that they deserve. We are here not to add on to the sensationalism of a case that has received global news and global attention, but to recenter that at the heart of this are human beings. At the heart of this are women, girls, now generations of girls beneath them. Though we were able to hear from a number of women today, we know that there were hundreds of women who were involved in this case. Hundreds of women, many of whom are unnamed, but hundreds of women who were victimized, who were sexually abused and then re-victimized by the obstruction from the government. And behind them are millions of girls who have watched how our country, how society handles cases of sexual abuse. They have watched the rich and the powerful get off. They have watched, even in death, them be protected. And we are here as oversight Democrats to say that the time to step up, the time to push, to fight, to ensure justice is now, and today is why we are here to renew our calls, not just for an official hearing, as Representative Ayanna Pressley has called for an official hearing on the books within our committee. Though we are thankful for the roundtable that we had today, we affirm our calls for that. We also reaffirm our calls for the Department of Justice to hand over immediately all of the files within its custody. Not just to ourselves, but also a reminder that, as we learned today, some of the victims themselves have not been able to access their own files. So we want to remind the press, we want to remind our country and the population that these women are still seeking justice for themselves, that they're still seeking healing for themselves, and to the extent that we are able to continue to keep our eyes on what the ultimate prize is, that we will do that, that we will continue to pursue justice in a way that does no more harm to these women and does no more harm to any of the victims, not just of Epstein, but of sexual assault across our country. Thank you. With that, actually, I'll be handing it off to our colleague from Texas, Representative 𝐒𝐿𝐴zmin Crockett.
Thank you so much. And first of all, let me just say that we are standing before you. We're having this conversation because of the oversight Democratic leadership. And so I want to reiterate that it's the Democratic leadership on oversight that has truly been able to move this forward. I'm sure many of you don't recall, but we were sent home early to try to avoid being able to take a vote on something like getting these files. We are about doing real transparency. We don't care who's in the files, we are going after you. So if I had to sum up what happened today, we heard the stories of victims, and honestly, we heard the story of at least one person that has never come forward before today. This was the very first time that she was telling anyone in a semi-public way her story. And if I had to summarize the theme, I would say that their theme was to do something. It is probably the theme of the American people in general right now when it comes to government, is that they want us to do something. So yes, we have the roundtable, but they actually want to see some action. The fact that this started off in the 90s, and we had someone who could talk about what happened to them in the 90s, but then you go down the line and you've got somebody that's telling us their story from 2008. These failures led to years and years of abuse that did not have to take place. And so the reality is this. Some think that this is all over and some think that nothing else is going on. But if there was ever a RICO case, it would have been the Epstein case. So how we went from something that should have been RICO because of how sophisticated of a system this was, and this wasn't just one little sick old man that was doing stuff, but there were so many layers, whether we're talking about the banks that were involved, whether we're talking about those that worked for him, that helped him, whether we're talking about the monster known as Maxwell, and that's exactly how y'all need to refer to her. She is a monster. She is not a victim. So let me tell you, I want some action items to come out of this, because for once we somewhat look like we're bipartisan in the Oversight Committee. Number one, we need answers. We need answers on why it is that Maxwell was transferred from her current station or her former station in Florida down to Texas. We need to have an understanding, because everything that I heard today leads me to know that for sure she was all up and in and through this entire process, not to mention that she was indicted by a jury of her peers, and then she was tried and convicted and given 20 years. So why is it that we had somebody, again, it almost seems like we are doomed to repeat our failures, because why is it we have high-level people that seemingly are running cover for a criminal? And that is what she is. She is a monster and she is a criminal. So number one, we need answers on what happened with that transfer, why it took place. And honestly, we all need to stand together and say that Maxwell needs to go back to where the monsters go, which is to a higher level of security. We also need to understand that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has legislation that she has been trying to push forward. And so in a bipartisan way, we all need to get behind Debbie, because we found, and what we learned is that there were loopholes as it relates to the Crime Victims Act. And so we've got to make sure that no other victims suffer in the way that they did when you have somebody like Alex Acosta that decides that he wants to play games and dismiss a case and never inform the victims of what's going on as is required by law. So we are going to have to fix those loopholes to make sure that that doesn't happen, because it took them 10 years of fighting this, and ultimately by the time they got to the end of it, well, it also was Jeffrey Epstein's end, and so there was not a resolution for that. And the final thing that I think that we need to do is, obviously, we need to continue to push forward and make sure that we get all the files, because we know that we have not received them all. Because I am standing in front of the press, I'm also going to make a plea. One of the things that I realized was that there's a lot of stuff that the DOJ may have, but honestly, if you don't have a thorough investigation, and I can't say if we had a thorough investigation or not, we have no idea. But the reality is that when you have investigators that go out and they collect information. I am not necessarily convinced that they even have gone out and done their due diligence to fully investigate this case in the first place. So if there's anyone in the public that believes that you have information that would be valuable, you've never been able to get through to federal agencies, or no one would listen to you when you try to go forward and bring information forward, I am asking that you trust oversight DIMS and you bring that information to us. Or if you know where some information is contained, let us know so that we can then send subpoenas out that way. We want to do right not only by those that have already suffered under Epstein, but we want to prevent other trafficking rings that we know are out there. We want to make sure that we are doing right for future generations. So with that, I now have the honor of presenting to you the firecracker out of New Mexico.
So before we get to that real quick, I want to make a couple of interesting observations. One, she mentioned the RICO Act. She's absolutely right, and I'm flabbergasted. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind. This is absolutely what the RICO Act was made for, and nobody has even brought it up. There's been cover-ups. There's been multiple felonies, and this is absolutely a RICO case. So it's clear that she understands the gravity of this case. She also points out that when Epstein had 36 accusers under the age of 18, 36 accusers under the age of 18 in 2008, he got a sweetheart deal that he was essentially allowed to walk. And Acosta was the DA on that, and we've covered how and why on that before. But I mean, if there is any evidence of a cover up, I mean, 36 accusers, and now if he had been stopped, then the FBI had him. The FBI was quoted as saying they thought he was going away for life. They had him on so many accusers of so many serious crimes. And he got a little time at basically a halfway house where he could even work outside and continue doing what he was doing. She also points out that Ghislaine Maxwell is as guilty as Epstein. They've interviewed all of these women, and now Ghislaine Maxwell has, and you're going to hear more about this in a minute, Ghislaine Maxwell has given testimony saying that, she really didn't understand that most of this was going on. She was kind of an innocent victim. And what they're saying here is like, why would you, I'll let them say it. They say it better than I do. But I think the pointing out that if Ghislaine Maxwell is in a minimum security institution at this point, with work release, something is very, very wrong. And we have hundreds of victims now. What the hell is going on?
All right. Well, I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I represent New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. And I want to say that I'm truly stunned by what I heard today. The thing about being a victim of assault, of sexual violence, is that it not only steals your sense of self, it steals your dignity, it steals your ambition, it steals your hopes, it steals your dreams, and it steals your sense of personhood. And what we heard today is from a half dozen victims, some of whom have already pursued both civil and criminal suits against both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as from several who have never told their stories in public.
Sorry, there was one other thing I wanted to say that I forgot to mention. She also pointed out that she's not convinced there was an investigation. She put it very politely, but she's talking to these victims, and most of them can't get their own file, which means if they've testified and they've said this is what happened, they can't look at their own file, which means they can't tell if it's been recorded accurately. Maybe when they said, well, I was alone in a room with Donald J. Trump, it changes to I was alone in a room. They don't know. And she points out that it looks like the FBI did not actively go out and try to find victims, and did not actively follow up with people. That this was just sort of a like, oh shoot, another person is saying they're a victim. Well, we'll take a statement and maybe it'll end up somewhere, maybe it won't. That's a staggering claim. So anyways, I'll continue.
But before I turn to the substance of the case itself, I want to say to anyone out there who is currently experiencing abuse of any kind, we see you. We are here fighting for you, and we will fight for justice for every person who is experiencing sexual violence in this country, and that is what this case is actually about. But I want to be clear that what we heard today is a cover-up. And it is a cover-up of epic proportions, a cover-up involving the United States government, the justice system, rich and powerful individuals, a cover-up potentially involving foreign countries and foreign actors. And yes, here today in this House, as our colleagues are up in the House chamber in the Rules Committee, a cover-up by the Republicans in this chamber. Because as you will find out in the coming days and weeks, this goes all the way to the top. So let's be clear about that. There has been a systemic failure of the justice system for decades. A systemic failure to hold people who are powerful and have money to account, and that has allowed not just hundreds but potentially thousands of women, not only in the United States but around the world, to be bought, sold, and trafficked for sex, not only by Jeffrey Epstein but by his associates and his rich and powerful friends. And as these stories come forward, whether they're stories that have already been told, they're stories in those FBI files that have not been released by the Department of Justice and which they must release because of the subpoena, or whether they are stories of victims that have not yet come forward, we will hold you all accountable for this miscarriage of justice, for the abuse of these women, and the abuse of this institution to try to cover it up. because there happens to be a very powerful person at the top who doesn't want these stories out. So that is why we subpoenaed these records. That is why these victims were here today to bravely tell their stories. And whatever justice looks like in the coming days and weeks and years, we will follow every thread. We will follow every piece of evidence. We will follow every bank record. We will follow every investigation. We will follow every court order. And we will make sure that those who were abused by these men are held accountable. That's right.
All right, so she said all the way at the top, everybody here knows what that means. That's the President of the United States. That language was last used in a big way with Nixon when Deep Throat said that this had gone all the way to the top. But Bernstein asked him, does it go to the top? Yes, it goes to the top. So that notwithstanding, she literally also, the top, so she was a little... it's obvious who she meant. She didn't say the name. However, she also said it involves members of Congress. I hadn't really considered this, but I think this is obviously worth considering and is patently. Here's the problem. Johnson, you can take a look at Johnson and say, well, you know, he's trying to save or cover his political ass. Okay, but at one point, if at any point it gets so that it's more likely than not that Trump is guilty, he is now an accomplice when he starts covering it up. He goes from trying to do what's politically expedient for the President of the United States to becoming an accomplice. And what she outright just said here is that there are members of this Congress who have been involved in the cover-up. She is accusing them of being accomplices. She also said that the FBI has files that they know exist, which means they've gotten them from other sources that have not yet been released, which means she is accusing the FBI of being involved, which we already basically kind of knew and we've talked about. Bondi, you know, we talked about that, but this is the first time somebody has publicly made that accusation like that. Let's keep going.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman 𝐒𝐚𝐬, and sorry, I represent Phoenix, Arizona. This is incredibly difficult to do. We sat this afternoon listening to brave, courageous women in the face of threats to their lives and threats to their families' lives, in the face of retaliation from the highest ranking officials, from billionaires, from extremely powerful people that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. We sat there today listening to these brave women speak and tell us the truth about what has happened for decades in this country without any accountability whatsoever. Listening to them, I was in awe because I don't think I could have done what they did today. I think I would have been too scared and too fearful of what might happen to me. And the fact that some of these stories and the abuse that has been ongoing for so long, I was 4 years old when some of the witnesses, some of the folks in the room today began being abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And as the youngest woman currently serving in this body, I feel an immense responsibility that we do not let this go on any longer, that we need justice and accountability, and we need to prove to young women in this country, to our daughters and to our granddaughters, that we will not let the government of the United States of America, what is supposed to be a free country, a country that believes in law and order and justice and accountability, protect the most powerful people, not only in our country, but who knows, from across the world. So today served, I think, as a reaffirming of our commitment, our profound commitment to making sure that we get justice and we get accountability. There were many themes that we heard today from the brave women who spoke to us. First and foremost, it is an absolute atrocity that the Trump administration allowed and sent over the president's former defense attorney to speak with a monster and to then publicize that interview and provide this monster with a platform to perpetuate her lies. The Trump administration needs to be held accountable for that. We need to demand that Ghislaine Maxwell never get a pardon from the United States government and actually serve out the time that she was given and that she deserves for the crimes that she committed. House Oversight Democrats, and I'm so grateful to our leadership. We are incredibly lucky to have the leadership of Representative Garcia and, of course, Congresswoman Lee, who initiated the subpoena. But this is just the beginning. I think today made very clear that even those of us here who've been working on this and fighting for this, there is so much to this story that nobody knows. There are decades worth of stories and information and a cover-up of this capacity to have allowed for the abuse of over 1,000 women over the course of decades, and then stories that demonstrate that Epstein and others were able to perpetuate the abuse beyond, even after the public knew. We know there's a lot more to this. And I think that this is the most corrupt administration in American history, and this story shows it more than anything. So we will keep fighting in honor of the survivors who are brave enough to put themselves out there for truth and justice, and we will not back down until there is full accountability and prevention from this ever happening again. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Congressman Lynch. Thank you so much.
So I say again, a congressman accusing their fellow congressmen of being engaged in the worst kind of conspiracy you can imagine. I'd like to add also, she makes an excellent point. We've made this point repeatedly about Donald Trump's personal lawyer being the one who did the interview, now Deputy Department of, I mean, such a conflict of interest, but that notwithstanding, of course, all of it gets made public, and she lies in a self-serving way that says, A, I didn't really do anything, and B, makes Trump completely puts Trump completely off the hook. Now, we have testimony from one victim that puts Trump squarely in the dead center of the hook. What she just said right here dovetails with what we expect to hear in part tomorrow. The hosts of tomorrow's it's going to be two House members tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be carrying it live. They will host 10 victims who will tell their stories. We anticipate Ghislaine Maxwell featuring heavily and being an equal co-partner to Epstein. If that's the case, first of all, then there's some irony that she has essentially received the same sentence and is working at the same kind of facility. But if that's the case, then that means anybody involved in that interview, including his former attorney, because that would have been suborning perjury, they're all implicated now at this point, and the only reason to have done that interview is because Trump is guilty and he knows that she was involved. So once again, the implications, and it's clear that they have this, by the way. They're not guessing here. They've spoken to the victims, and the victims have all said Ghislaine Maxwell was heavily involved. So that means everything she said was a lie. That means the entire thing was orchestrated, and that's huge.
Thank you, Yasmin. Today we had the opportunity to hear from 6 courageous women who were all victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Even though there are only 6 of them in the room today, they spoke on behalf of over 1,000 other victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And you could see that they were crushed in a way at the news that Ghislaine Maxwell had received favorable treatment from President Trump and his personal attorney, being relocated to a less secure facility. But we cautioned them. We cautioned the witnesses today to tell them that even though there was bipartisan support in that room for them, it was far from unanimous. And there are people at the very highest levels of this government today that are not happy that on the first day of our return, Congress is taking up this issue and defending the women, all the women who were victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And it's only through the leadership of Ms. Summer and Mr. Garcia in spearheading this effort and making sure that this issue is treated fully and fairly on behalf of the victims that we're here today. But today, the work really begins. Thank you. And I want to introduce my friend, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐴.
Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues, and most of all, I want to thank the brave women who came today to speak up, as well as their lawyers, many of whom are working for free for many years now. The one thing that holds them back sometimes is how much they've been disappointed over the years by our government and by people at the top and the people in charge of protecting them and serving them justice. And the reality is the system has failed them over and over again. And so our commitment is that we will not fail them, that we will not let this go, that we will continue to ask the right questions. We will continue to pursue justice and pursue transparency because those women, those brave women deserve it. And so we will not let this go. And the president and this administration has a choice. They can either join the many people who covered up this person's crimes, or they can join the people who are going to seek justice and seek what the victims want, which is real justice. And so we are going to continue to pursue this, and we will not stop. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Min, California.
Thank you all. It was a sobering few hours just now, and I want to thank the survivors who came forward, sharing their stories at great cost, great personal sacrifice. We talked to some women who had been followed in recent weeks, who received threats, and this compounds on decades worth of threats. But their story deserves being told, and one of the things that kept coming up was that there was the initial victimization, the assaults, the grooming, the abuse, but there was also a sense of re-victimization every time this story came up again, every time it became clear that justice would be deferred again. And I just want to remind you all that we're here because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, the Attorney General and Director of the FBI, said that there were no Epstein files just a few weeks back. And that has led to all this controversy. It's what led to this moment today. And I just want to repeat something. What we learned in there makes it very clear that not only are there Epstein files, that there are a vast quantity of very pertinent and salient Epstein files that show a roadmap to who was responsible, what was going on here. There are bank records. There are thousands of hours of witness interviews, some of which the witnesses themselves have never had access to. We deserve answers at this point. And just building on what was said earlier, I want to conclude with this because one of the survivors in there said something that really stuck with me. Right now, young women and girls throughout this country are watching very closely to see if the United States government is going to step up and protect them. If we're going to protect them from sexual assault and abuse and human trafficking. And this is our moment to affirmatively answer the question, no. Hell no, that in the United States we're going to step up with this oversight committee, with the leadership of Ranking Member Garcia. We're going to step up and demand those answers. We're going to demand accountability. So thank you all. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague from St. Louis, Wesley Bell.
All right, so he has now basically thrown both Kash Patel and Pam Bondi under the bus. The accusation, and this is, by the way, obvious, but it's nice to have somebody just draw the very simple line. He's like, we're already reading 33,000 pages. We've got bank records. We've got statements, thousands of hours of testimony. And he's already suggested, as has been suggested by multiple ones, that there are other perpetrators involved. That there are other, which obviously, if there are hundreds or even thousands of victims, they weren't all just victims of Epstein. They were victims of his clients. And according to Pam Bondi, he didn't have any clients, or at least none that they could find. My understanding is she went around and asked people should go up at a bar and say, "Are you one of Epstein's clients?" And they said, "Who?" And she said, "Okay, I guess." Whatever the methodology was, apparently there are no clients. And what he seems to be suggesting is they have the proof, not evidence, proof of multiple clients. Once again, he suggested that this goes all the way to the top. And Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, who earlier said, "Oh, we'll release all the files," and then it's like, "Oh, we don't have any." It's like they're saying they don't have any, which means they are now co-conspirators because, again, we talked about this, the difference between, doing what's politically expedient and once you know, the second Pam Bondi opened those files, she knew the truth. If she defends Trump after that, she is now a co-conspirator. Same with Kash Patel. If they resign and never say anything, they might be okay because they can say what they saw was classified. They couldn't, but they can't go out and say there's no files. They can't defend Trump after that. Or they've gone from doing their job to conspiracy. So what he said doesn't sound big. It's huge. And he said they've seen the records. They also have the testimony, and they're doing their own witness interviews. So they're comparing what they're getting from the Justice Department to what the witnesses themselves are saying. Want to bet some of it's not going to match up?
And I'll make this brief. I had a couple quick takeaways. One, as a prosecutor, I've sat in meetings with victims on cases like these, and you never get used to it. Looking these folks in the eye, the courage that it takes for them to speak their truth and to talk about how they were harmed, it resolves us and makes us laser focused on the fact that we have to get to the bottom of this. We have to get to the bottom of this. What we've seen, these crimes, this cover-up, the scale of it, and I've been involved in prosecutions of a lot of folks, but the scale of these crimes that we're seeing to the highest levels of governments and is of biblical proportions. And I'll say this to the media as I close. Anyone who tells you that downplays this, that says that there's nothing to see here, there's nothing to look at them. Because we have to get to the bottom of it, and what we saw in there, these survivors, is courage. We stand with them, and we're going to work with them and find justice though the heavens fall. Garcia, thank you. Just to close, two things. One is Donald Trump has the power right now to release all of the Epstein files and documents. Right now. The DOJ is refusing to release the documents that have been subpoenaed. So there is a White House cover-up at the very highest level in getting the American public the information to bring justice to these victims. And I think it's very important for everyone to understand that. The second thing that's important is in the days ahead, we already know we're going to hear from some of the victims tomorrow. We're going to be hearing from other victims in other ways in the days and weeks ahead. It is very important that we believe these women, that we believe these survivors, we honor that, and that we work to bring them justice. And that is going to be very important in the days ahead. If there's time for one or two questions, and then we've got the Rules Committee.
I just wanted to add
yes,
that
please.
Today's roundtable, again, it was necessary, it was long overdue, and it was very powerful. And it is why I continue to call for a congressional hearing, because their stories need to be a part of a congressional record, and the entire public needs to understand just how systemic and how far and wide and how deep this institutional betrayal goes. So that congressional hearing still needs to happen, and this discharge petition still needs to go to the floor. So this roundtable, oversight Dems, the subpoena, forcing the vote for the subpoena to the DOJ, important step. Today's roundtable, important step. A congressional hearing centering the voices of Epstein survivors is essential. We cannot hold powerful abusers to account without centering those survivors and doing it on the congressional record to give that transparency to the public as well. And then finally, this discharge petition does need to come to a floor so we can get all of the files. One of the things that was said over and over again today is that the investigation is not complete. That's right. The investigation is not even done.
That's right.
So we need all of this.
That's right. Is there a question or two?
Yeah, how confident are you that the discharge petition will get enough people signing on to make it to the floor? And if it doesn't, what can you do?
Well, there's been enough Republicans that have said that they're going to sign it. It's on the ball's in their court. If Republicans really are going to be focused on transparency and openness, they're going to need to sign that petition. And it's an important part. So we're calling on Speaker Johnson, who was here hearing these victims, to encourage his members to sign that petition.
Speaker Johnson said earlier that he thinks that this discharge petition is moot because of the work that the Oversight Committee is doing. Obviously, the subpoenas went out in large part because of your efforts. I'm curious what your response is to that, given that the DOJ has told Chairman Comer that they're going
Speaker
to...
Johnson tried to end the last session. In fact, he ended it early to avoid any more discussion about the Epstein files. It's thanks to the work of our subcommittee, Congresswoman Lee and her leadership, that actually forced that release. And now, every step of the way, as far as what Republicans have disclosed, we have forced them or pushed them to do. We've been asking for Alex Acosta to be subpoenaed. They refused. It wasn't until we began talking to other Republicans, Congresswoman Luna and others, that said they would vote with us to get that information. Now Alex Acosta is being subpoenaed. We demanded, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has been demanding to hear from the victims from day one, the survivors. They haven't taken any action until enough pressure has been put, and you see what's happening today. So we continue to bring the pressure. We're not going to stop until we get justice for all of the survivors and the victims in this case. And every step of the way, we're going to force every single vote. We're going to bring it up every single subcommittee until we get justice for every single victim.
The Speaker also says that petition doesn't protect victims. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm going to go let other folks. I'm going to head to Rules Committee, so you guys want to take over?
I just want to add one more note, that it's noteworthy that in the room with 6 victims of sexual violence by Jeffrey Epstein, it was suggested by Democrats that this be investigated using the full force of every committee here in Congress. And the Speaker ended by saying he didn't think that was necessary. He'd like to just keep it in the Oversight Committee. I would like to point out to you all, this is the same Oversight Committee that tried to impeach Biden, the same Oversight Committee that's been shielding Donald Trump, and it's the same Oversight Committee that we know is working collaboratively with leadership in the White House to shield them from accountability. So I think you can draw your own conclusions about those comments, but that is where the Speaker actually chose to end this conversation.
Was that in conversation with you?
Sorry about the audio. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's Forbes. So what they're talking about is the motion to have the the discharge petition to have Congress forced the FBI to release the files to the public. This discharge position, Speaker Johnson has said, is unnecessary because the files are being released by the Oversight Committee. But the problem is, A, it looks like the Oversight Committee isn't getting all the files. They're getting redacted files. And it looks like at the idea that all of Congress should be involved, Johnson said no. Kana and Massey have created this discharge petition. They need 218 votes, and they seem to believe they've got them. They've got the vote of every Democrat. They need enough Republicans. But the suggestion that has just been made at this point is that Johnson may be aware that Trump is guilty and is at this point protecting him. Again, there's a difference between believing that your party's, the opposition's being obstructionist or trying to derail you, and having cause to believe that there's something there and deliberately killing an investigation. She points out also that the Epstein investigation was never finished. Ghislaine Maxwell, only 6 people testified against her, and the FBI never finished the investigation. From what they can tell, a number of witnesses were not interviewed. So they don't know every one of the clients. And according to Pam Bondi, they don't need to. it's staggering. This is almost done, and again, I do apologize for the audio. This is almost done, and again, what you're hearing from now, Kana just spoke. He's the tall one in the back. Kana and Posse will be hosting a press conference tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, just outside of the Capitol building. Roughly 100 victims will be there, or 100 survivors will be there. 10 of them will be speaking. Some of them have never spoken or testified before. All of them should have been sworn and given sworn depositions somewhere, because either Epstein or Maxwell, by definition, had to have been involved with them, or else they're not a survivor. So why is this going to be the first, even in terms of sworn depositions or testimony? But at any rate, we've also been told, if I can find it, that the public will be shocked and astounded by what they have to say tomorrow. So we're going to finish this up, and then we're going to talk about our coverage of tomorrow's press conference, which this was a precursor to it. I have a feeling tomorrow's is going to be big.
It was in the room with the victims, even with the victims in the room.
No, I was just going to add about that alleged mootness. After hearing their stories and talking about the fact that they have been trying to go to all levels of government since the 90s, what we should do is make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that we finally get some semblance of justice for them. So if that means that there's an extra vote that doesn't really take us very much time, even if he believes that it's moot, it's worth it so that those victims feel like we are actually serious. We need to pull every single lever that we have. And right now, I could hear and see within them, they kept saying, we're believing and we're trusting you, right? They were saying the words, but I can tell you that their body language was not giving off trust. Their body language, in fact, one of them said something to the effect of, either you all are all very serious and honest about this, or you're very good actors. We're gonna find out who's real, and we're gonna find out who the real actors are. And so that is why anyone who believes that this matters, they should sign the discharge, and they being the Republicans, should go to their leadership and demand a vote be had on the floor.
Well, the argument, to follow up on the question that you asked, was that one of the arguments that's being made both by the Speaker and by Republicans before you all left for recess was that there's not enough language in the discharge petition that would protect the victims, that would handle some of the redactions that I know you all are doing in oversight. So
can I just say to your question, you're asking us, you're asking the oversight Dems, where our leadership pushed a vote to crack this thing open. You're asking us to do the right thing. We're here. We're the ones who stepped to those survivors after and thanked them and asked them if they were safe tonight. We are going to do, behind you are folks who we probably have close to 80 years of working with victims of sex trafficking, of ensuring that girls and young women have a space in the justice system to tell their stories. The oversight Dems, we're here. We're here. When you don't have the House and you don't have the Senate, we're pushing and using every tool that we have. And why this is important, it is about Epstein, it's about these survivors, but moreover, it is about an administration that refuses to tell the truth, that refuses to protect young girls. It is about an administration that wants you to look away. Well, we heard girls today who are in their 30s who talked about being raped when they were 14. We heard a young girl talk about being told that she would be able to pay for her mother's cancer treatment if she just cooperated. And we're talking about folks in this building and at the highest levels of government potentially being implicated. You ask the Republicans the same question. You ask them what they're going to do to step up and protect young women all over this country who were trafficked from state to state. to be raped and their bodies literally ravaged. That's a quote. Young women in there who are talking about they need to step forward because they too have little girls. They too want to make sure that their girls can look up to them. They want nothing but to be heard. They want nothing but to literally be listened to, because the epic proportion of folks in this administration turning their heads, sending folks home early, sweeping it under the rug. It is the oversight Dems who are saying, do what you will, but tell the truth on behalf of the souls of these young women and the millions in this country. If these women who have the international attention right now are begging for justice, can you imagine the little girl downtown in any American city by herself being trafficked? That's why this is important. If you have people at the highest levels of government potentially implicated in the rape and the trafficking of these young women, we would do the right thing. You ask the Republicans what they're going to do, because we're here. We good. We're saying we got you. We want to protect you, whether it's your county courthouse or literally in the oversight committee in the Supreme, wherever it takes. You deserve justice, and that's every girl.
And I would ask my Republican colleagues to prove that they will break their legacy of treating trauma with more trauma and shielding predators, from Jim Jordan to Matt Gaetz to Donald Trump and now to Jeffrey Epstein. They've got a hell of a track record. They might want to try to break that up. In the words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. Are we going to step up and be good men and women so that evil does not triumph? And I'm going to close on the final thing, which is the most important. For people that would wonder, how high are the stakes here? This is a matter of life and death. Because Virginia Giuffre took her life after decades of failure, and there are victims that can no longer come forward because they're in a fetal position, so broken by the weight of what they've been carrying, shame that they've been carrying when it is not their shame to carry. So Virginia Giuffre took her life because of the institutional, consecutive failures and betrayals of our government. So this is a matter of life and death.
I just to get to this thing about this excuse, because that's what it is. All it is that the speaker is giving an excuse, saying that this is about protecting the victims, and that's the reason. I'm sorry, but we have tools. Now, granted, I'm not sitting in rules right now, but we have things known as amendments. You can fix anything that is broken. So if you feel as if the problem is that the legislation isn't perfect, and Lord knows we are good about pushing out imperfect legislation in this body, we do have tools that can fix it. This is nothing more than an excuse for him not to push forward and try to say that it's on behalf of the victims. But if the speaker knows his job, then he knows how to fix legislation that has problems.
Thank you.
All right, that was the press conference, roughly 43 minutes long, from about 3 or 4 hours ago, and we felt that it was important enough to bring to you a couple of things. First of all, it is one of the objections that they bring. They're like, well, we can't pass the discharge petition because it says release the Epstein files, and that would include pornography, child pornography. That would include the names of the victims, all this other stuff. So you can't say release it without redactions. Well, you can make amendments to the petition, so why aren't you doing that? That's a legit complaint. At any rate, as I said before, the discharge petition will have to have Republicans sign it. How many they think they've got enough to do it. I want to say they need 18, but that's just that may be a number from the previous Congress where they were. I think they need 18 to sign it. They have 4. Thank you, Mexi Girl, for giving me the list here. We've got 4 that have signed. Massey from Kentucky. Massey's actually a co-sponsor, but also that counts as a signature. Boebert of Colorado. Macy from South Carolina, and Green from Georgia have all signed it tonight. So they believe that they're going to get enough to do that. And then, like I said, what this is it's going to be different than the subpoena they've issued. The subpoena is a judge's order. This is an order from Congress. This actually carries more weight. It's essentially passing a law saying that they are required to release the files. So it's important. They think they've got the votes, and they bring up a very good point, which is at this point, if you don't vote for it, why not? And if the objection is you may dox people, well, then file an amendment, which probably should be done. But tomorrow, there are two separate groups I want to talk about here real quickly. We did get a super chat or two, so I do want to get to those. Two separate groups I want to discuss in Congress in regards to this. First is the Oversight Democrats. The Oversight Democrats, and that's actually genuinely unfair because I think it's 3 Republicans that have joined them, but it's the minority Democrats plus 3 that have empowered them to do an end run around their committee chairman and get these subpoenas. These subpoenas have produced the results that they are now comparing to the people they're speaking with. And we had mentioned this earlier, which is the people releasing the files, and I'm going to say Pam Bondi, there's going to be more involved. But Pam Bondi's got a legitimate problem because she knows they're speaking to the original source material. So if the testimony doesn't match up with what the FBI is giving them, and the FBI should have been able to, when the FBI asked for these files from the NYPD, they got them 48 hours later. They got them 48 hours later. It's taking them weeks to bring out dribs and drabs, and it's after they've scoured them, as we know, for the name Donald Trump. We know one person. She is a Jane Doe. I don't believe her name was released. We showed her testimony. She made unbelievable accusations of Donald Trump when she was 14. Is her testimony in there? Because this is a deposition she's given. If it's in there, why hasn't it been acted on? Why hasn't anyone followed up? If it's not in there, why isn't it in there? So I am more confident than ever that the group that you just saw, which did in fact include 𝐒𝐚𝐬 and Massey, but the group that you just saw, this was the House Democrats from the Oversight Committee, essentially speaking. They're the ones who requested the files. They're the ones who have it. 2 other Congress people, 𝐒𝐚𝐬 and Massey. Ro Khanna is a Democrat from California. Thomas Massey is a Republican from Kentucky. Have filed a bill because the Republicans are in charge, and because the House Speaker Johnson will not allow for any legislation to investigate into this. They have to do what's called a discharge petition, which is basically get enough people from Congress to sign that whether he wants it or not, it's going to pass. Discharge petitions are actually very, very rare, and this is like the 3rd or 4th. They almost did one on an impeachment of Trump for this, like as soon as he got into office. Those of you may remember right after he did his first State of the Union, there was a discharge petition that people were proposing to impeach him, but they said, why bother? You're going to go through this whole mess and you're not going to get anywhere in the Senate. So let better things to do with our time, like this. At any rate, everything you just saw was, for the most part, the Oversight Committee. It was their press conference. 𝐒𝐚𝐬 and Massey did speak. 𝐒𝐚𝐬 and Massey are having their own press conference on the discharge petition and why it's so important and how serious this is and how big a cover-up this is. They are having that press conference with over 100 victims in attendance, and 10 will be speaking to tell their stories. This will be tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In time, we'll begin our coverage of that tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll start, we're just going to do a précis of what's gone on up until now. The link to it is up at the top, and as soon as we're done with the show, you will be redirected to tomorrow's coverage, which again will begin about a half hour early, and then we're going to see. But given what we've just heard, which I think is, I think, believe it or not, I think they were holding back. I think we're going to see something tomorrow. I think it's going to be big, so we will be covering that live. UTV and Ham gifted 1 membership. Thank you very much, UTV and Ham. Your good deed for the day. Much appreciated. Sinister Porpoise, $2. I have Spider-Man logos and, well, perfect. Thank you. And Ukraine Chick gifted 5 memberships, in-time memberships. Thank you for that as well. So, like I said, for those of you who didn't join us right away, there were 2 stories we were going to cover today. It is a very important story. Donald Trump's administration and Trump himself was tried and convicted of violating the Posse Comitatus Act. It was a 3-day trial. He was tried by a bench. It was a bench trial. And he was convicted of having violated Posse Comitatus for deploying the military in California. This is going to immediately go up on appeal, but he has been ordered to bring the 300 troops that remain back. They did not address D.C. Probably D.C. is a whole other issue. Trump has nonetheless said today that he is going to be deploying ICE and the National Guard to Chicago, what the Chicago mayor and governor of Illinois are calling an invasion. We have covered that and discussed it. It's the first time a president has been convicted of violating Posse Comitatus, which is an extraordinarily serious. It's usually considered constitutional level. It was actually an act passed on, but most people say it essentially says the Constitution does not permit you to deploy troops, but it's not actually in the Constitution. Nonetheless, it's extremely serious, but this was more important, so we decided to spend our time on this. We're just letting you know we're a news show. That was also in the news, and under any other day, it would be something we'd spend a lot of time talking about. So we will be seeing you all tomorrow, 10 a.m., bright and early, where we will begin our coverage of 𝐋𝐚𝐦𝐚𝐫's press conference with 10 of the survivors of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. At this point, I think the takeaways from this press conference we just saw is that it is crystal clear to everybody on the Oversight Committee that Donald J. Trump is involved heavily. They've pointed out repeatedly any number of things, including that he could make all of these things released just like that. It's his Justice Department that's withholding them. It's his Justice Department that says nothing's in them, that is saying nothing's in them, but you can't look at them anyway, and is then redacting his name. The number of congressmen and people at the White House and the Justice Department and the executive branch that this would necessarily implicate is getting rather large, not to mention the other clients, which are going to likely be wealthy people we know. We all know, I was going to throw out some names of billionaires just to demonstrate that we know names of billionaires, and I realized that might inadvertently be implicating that. I have no idea who's on. I have no idea. The only one that we had heard was, we know David Copperfield, the magician, attended one of the parties. He apparently did not know what was going on, and the testimony of one of the young girls at the party was that he advised her to leave immediately once he discovered what was going on. That was my understanding of the testimony of what... There you go. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. And let me just quickly check and make sure there isn't anything else before we go. Oh, No, Titan is proposing a raid. What we're going to do is we're going to raid ourselves. We are redirecting you after this to tomorrow's show so that you have the link already. It's just going to make it easier than having to go to the channel or whatever. The show's all set up. So immediately, as soon as this ends, it'll send you to the link for tomorrow's show at 10 a.m. Nice to see people who really seem to take this seriously, understand the gravity of it, and we're willing to. This is why we were there for the Liz Cheney thing, and it's nice to see. So my expectation at this point is that going forward in the next couple of days to weeks, we are going to see some major cracks in the system, because everybody who's involved now has to figure out, do they believe that Trump is involved? And if the answer is yes, if you do anything else to help him, you've just become an accomplice. That's a big decision for a lot of people to make. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. For the victims, I think they had said in the title it was for the victims, but for the survivors press conference where they will be telling their stories. Thank you all. See you tomorrow.